What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another Tuesday episode of Skin in the Game. I am your host, Austin Thompson, and we have another great episode for you here, 7 p.m. every Tuesday. So, hope you guys come in, leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all the places that you'll find on social media at SITG Show. Please give us a follow. Don't be afraid to leave a comment. Let's have a conversation. That's what this show is really about. It's about having conversation and just bantering about the Chiefs, sports in general. And that's just what I love to do. So welcome. Today we got a good episode. Today we have a really interesting episode about the situation with the Chiefs hiring Eric Bieniemy and kind of maybe some statistics on the different coaches. And what I mean by that is there's kind of this narrative that Eric Bieniemy is going to come in and change the entire offense and really just kind of take over. And we're going to flip back to 2018 Mahomes, flip back to the 2018 Kansas City Chiefs. And so that is kind of a narrative that I want to at least put out there and say that it might be flawed. Not necessarily that it's false, but it might be flawed. So we're going to talk about the Eric Bieniemy versus Matt Nagy situation. We'll dive into some running back free agents. We'll also dive into the top 10 prospects that the Chiefs can potentially take at pick 9. And then we'll also dive into I'll give you my Super Bowl pick. We'll pick it was some great games last weekend. You know, the Seattle looks awesome, and that Denver Patriots game in the snow globe was really ugly, but I think it was interesting. It makes me love having an outdoor stadium, and it's kind of swayed me to, yes, I hope the Chiefs do move to Kansas and finalize their deal, and I do hope they build a new stadium, but I'm going to miss outdoor games. I'm going to miss having that snow weather effect in playoff games and whatnot. I felt like an advantage, but anyway, let's move on to the beginning of the show where we're going to talk about Eric Bieniemy versus Matt Nagy and kind of what we got between the two offensive coordinators. Before we start, I kind of want to play a little clip from Andy Reid, who went on his presser this week and basically acted like he was pretty fired up about the situation of hiring Eric Bieniemy, and Matt Nagy leaving, but he was pretty fired up about the side of Eric Bieniemy coming in.
I think EB is specifically going to do for Patrick at this point in his career.
Yeah, I mean, he brings it. Patrick knows him, first of all, Jesse, and then I tell you, EB will be very direct with him, with everybody, but he knows it's coming from a place of knowledge there that he knows. And Patrick, you guys could take this whole thing a couple different ways, so I want to make sure we're saying this right. Patrick loved Nags, and he also loves EB. So this isn't either or deal. It's one guy having to replace another guy and that's not what this is about. But I want to make sure Nags gets his shout out here too, and that EB gets his.
So there's a few things that I take away from that little clip. That was something that stuck out with me when I listened to it. It's about a 17-minute presser. Listened to it, and what stuck out with me is, one, it did seem like Andy Reid was pretty excited that Eric Bieniemy was going to be in. He seemed pretty excited. But the other thing is that he felt like he couldn't step on the toes and didn't want to just diminish Matt Nagy because of their relationship. And we know that Andy Reid is a relationship guy, so he doesn't want to just burn a bridge. But I think he's very excited about this idea of bringing back someone that he knows, that he's familiar with, and that they had great success together, at least on the offensive side of the ball, had amazing success. So the idea that he's fired up is good. It's a good sign. It means that there's going to be good cohesion because the relationship between Eric Bieniemy and the Chiefs, Andy Reid, Clark Hunt, whoever, didn't end on a good note in 2022. So the idea that he's going to come back and it feels like the vibes are high and that, you know, everybody is just ready to get to work, get this offense turned around, it's a good sign. So I want to throw some statistics out there as far as what Eric Bieniemy was able to do with his time in Kansas City, the first stunt, versus Matt Nagy's. But I want to put some context to it because I still think it was a not a horrible decision, but it wasn't a decision I would make to rehire Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator. And the reason why is because I think you needed new ideas. I think you were looking for someone to come in and give you new ideas that you could put across the board and help Andy Reid come up with new schemes, things like that. Andy Reid in that presser specifically mentioned about how he basically likes to call plays. Like he likes to call the plays. So his idea of that we're thinking that he might give up the reins and not call plays, that's not going anywhere. So there probably wasn't even a real chance that there was going to be an opportunity to go hire a different offensive coordinator that wasn't going to take a step back. Eric Bieniemy was coming from a running backs coach position and being promoted. So the idea that he's willing to come back to the situation on the Chiefs because it's a promotion. You know, he's getting back into play calling. He's getting back to the offensive coordinator. He wants to be a head coach. You know, when he left in 2022, that was the idea, to go become a head coach. So this gets him a step closer. I really think that there wasn't many options as far as who the Chiefs could have got for offensive coordinator, just off what Andy Reid said in the presser, which was he still likes to call the plays. Yes, there's situations, but overall, it's something that he loves to do. So that's a red flag to me. And I think that it was maybe the only option they had was Eric Bieniemy. So let's compare Eric Bieniemy versus Matt Nagy, and just as far as put some context to it, because there's a lot of things going online about how the Chiefs are going back to 2018, 2019. We're going to see a prolific offense, and Matt Nagy had ruined Mahomes and all these things. So let's put it into some context here and really understand what the difference is between the two offensive coordinators and what we should expect. So Eric Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator from 2018 to 2022. So here, according to StatMuse, are the Chiefs' points per game in those seasons. Again, 2018 was when Mahomes came out of the gates, year one starter, 35 points per game. Year two, 2019, was 28 points a game. 2020, 30 points a game. 2021, 28 points a game. And 2022, 29 points a game. So that is Eric Bieniemy's stunt with the Chiefs. That is what they were doing when he was in the building. Now, does he deserve all of that credit? I don't think so, and here's why. If we compare it to Matt Nagy's 3 years with the Chiefs from 2023, 24, and 25, I mean, we all know the scoring was way down. 2023 was just shy of 22 points per game, 21.8. 2024 was 22.6, and 2025 was 21.3. So the Chiefs were averaging roughly 21 points a game with Matt Nagy and about 30 points a game with Eric Bieniemy. And everybody just thinks that we're going to go back to this, that we're like, oh, Eric Bieniemy's back. We're back. We're going back to the 30 points per game. The highlight offense is back. The context is, and you have to think, just the two factors in that 30 points per game versus the 21 points per game was, yes, you had Mahomes, but you had Tyreek Hill, prime Tyreek Hill, and you had prime Travis Kelce. So, of course, you're going to score a lot of points, especially with a quarterback that steps on the scene that you don't even know what to do with. Coming in at 2018 and 2019, teams don't even know how to defend Mahomes. It took them 3 or 4 years to start playing cover 2, high safeties, to even stop the offense. It took them until 2022, basically. It took them 4 or 5 years to get to that point where they could slow down the Chiefs with Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator, Tyreek Hill as, one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver in this 5-year stretch, and Travis Kelce, obviously the best tight end. So the context is that you had prime Travis Kelce and prime Tyreek Hill. So let's look at who the Chiefs had from 2023, 2024, 2025. So Tyreek Hill gets traded. We know he's traded to the Dolphins. They move on. The Chiefs don't replenish at receiver whatsoever in this 3-year stretch. They stick to the draft. They draft Rashee Rice. They draft Xavier Worthy. But Rashee Rice has injury, has, trouble off the field, and Xavier Worthy has not lived up to that potential. Mahomes went to a Super Bowl with Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, MBS. These are guys that, that is an incredible stat, and Mahomes has been carrying this team, and I think a lot of people may not realize how much he's been carrying until this past year, but he has been such a bandage over the wounds that the Chiefs are experiencing when it comes to the receiver room, the offensive weapons, the running back room, all of it. What he's been able to do has covered so many flaws according, to this Chiefs offense. Again, there was no skill positions. Matt Nagy didn't have a whole lot to work with. Now, I don't think Matt Nagy is this super genius of an offensive coordinator or anything, but I just want to have context. I just don't want, I think Matt Nagy got a lot of the blame for these last few years when it really should have gone to Andy Reid. Matt Nagy was the scapegoat, and Andy Reid should have taken more of the blame because he acknowledges that he loves calling the plays. It's his offense. He does 51%. If it comes down to a decision, he's a 51% owner. He gets to make the decision. So that's kind of the context behind, what comes from Eric Bieniemy versus the Chiefs. Now, I don't know if it's a bad hire. I don't know if it's possible for the Chiefs to get back. You're looking at a 30-year-old Mahomes versus 25 when he came into the league, 24. You're looking at a 37-year-old Travis Kelce if he comes back. No Tyreek Hill. You're struggling with the run game. You're struggling with wide receiver weapons. You're not sure about your wide receiver one, if he's even going to be in the league or on the team in the future. There's a lot of question marks going around as far as the offense, as far as what's going to happen. Now, to the credit of Eric Bieniemy, I think he does bring another level that Matt Nagy didn't have. And I don't think Andy Reid has it very well, and it's the accountability. I do agree that is important. I think that when you have your best tight end of all time on your team, your best your Patrick Mahomes quarterback is giving praise for Eric Bieniemy coming in, it shows the respect. It shows how much they really care, and they understand that maybe they did come off the path a little bit and they need to be locked back in. So there is, to that certain extent, I agree. I think there is a level of the accountability is important. I agree. I just don't know if it's important enough not to go try to hire somebody else outside of Andy Reid's tree or somebody that you're comfortable with. Again, we're talking about NFL players. And if you're needing someone to hold you accountable, now I get rookies, younger guys, but if you need a guy to hold you accountable, then you might not be the right guy for the team. It's that simple. So I want to mention Eric Bieniemy's kind of stops from when he was, trying to get a head coaching job and didn't get it, to coming back to the Chiefs. So when he left Kansas City in 2022, he was circulating out and trying to get a head coaching job, and it just wasn't available. It just, nobody was biting, and people didn't really think he could do it. A lot of people, puts different narratives to it and whatnot, but at the end of the day, he didn't get a head coaching job. So here's what happened and where he went when he left the Chiefs. In 2023, he went to the Washington Commanders as an assistant head coach and the offensive coordinator. So he took a lateral move to go from Kansas City to the Washington Commanders. And the Chiefs, or the Commanders, averaged 19.4 points per game that season. That was when Ron Rivera was the head coach. Eric Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator. And it was just kind of the Commanders decided to clear house. They wanted to go a different direction, and they fired everybody. So I don't know if I can blame Eric Bieniemy for not lasting as the Commanders coach, but to his resume, he was fired from the offensive coordinator position with the Commanders. So 2024, he goes and signs a 2-year deal to be the associate head coach and offensive coordinator for the UCLA Bruins. So he takes a step down and goes to the college level. And again, they weren't the greatest team. They ranked 126th nationally as far as points per game. And again, you can't blame him necessarily for the players and the skill level and things like that. But again, it's just another notch in his resume that he took a step down and went to an offensive coordinator position in college. Signed that 2-year deal, decided to leave that, was done, I don't know if he got let go or if he just decided he was done. I think he might have got let go. And went to the Chicago Bears this past season as their running backs coach. So you went from trying to get a head coaching job to an offensive coordinator job with another team. You made a lateral move. Then you went to a college, made basically, in my eyes, a step down. And then you came back to the NFL as a running backs coach, which, again, I would probably call that a lateral move, an OC in college to a running backs coach in the NFL. So over the last 3 years, his resume has just not been great. It's not like he's been succeeding in all these things and he went and had this awesome offense and all that. He's taken steps back basically since he left Kansas City. So that is the issue that I have with the Chiefs hiring Eric Bieniemy, and at least not trying. Again, in that presser that Andy Reid had this week, he mentioned that they went and interviewed some other guys or had conversations, whatever it was, but is not willing to say who they were. And so to me, what that shows is either they weren't real conversations, they were just they had to do it to get, check mark the box, or I think nobody really wanted to be the offensive coordinator in Kansas City because they're not calling the plays. There's no growth. There's no growth unless you're some young cat who then you can take over for Andy Reid going forward. And that's not something that I think Eric Bieniemy is going to do. He's getting close to 60s, if not in his 60s. And so the Chiefs hire Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator, but he's not going to take over as the head coach. Andy Reid's only got a few years left. Realistically, I mean, I think, his contract ends in 2029. Do I think he makes it to 2029? Maybe. But overall, I think it's, I just think it's not the move I would make. It's just not the move that I would have made as the Chiefs hiring an offensive coordinator. I don't think I would have stuck to my comfort level. I think this year was such a disappointment that you almost had to try and flip something new. And that brings me to kind of like what I'm scared of as far as the Chiefs this season. I'm scared that they are going to use that same logic of being comfortable. They're comfortable with their guys. They're comfortable with who they like. And they're going to do that when rebuilding this roster. When it comes to free agency, they're not going to make big splashes like a Breece Hall. They're not going to do a big draft like a Jeremiah Love or try to go and get Reuben Bain. They're going to play it easy and get guys that they're comfortable with. And that's what scares me. That's what scares me about this Chiefs team is the logic has always been it's a close-knit group. It's a family, Andy Reid tree. You got to have a relationship. And I think this team needs different guys that haven't been anywhere near the system. They've always went in the offseason and got guys that have gone. You've seen McCole Hardman come back. You've seen Derek Nagy. You've seen Mike Pennell. These guys, they're comfortable with their guys that they draft, that they have been in the locker room, that know the system. And I hope that they don't do the same thing the way they hired Eric Bieniemy and decided to keep him on and do the same thing in free agency and bring in guys that are particular, not people that I would bring in or not letting guys go, like re-signing Isaiah Pacheco or not cutting Drew Tranquill, things like that. Those are moves that would frustrate me because that team is not the organization is acting on guys that they're comfortable with, that they know, versus going out and getting a guy in free agency or letting a guy walk and being more comfortable with getting somebody new. So that is just kind of the big difference in the Eric Bieniemy versus Matt Nagy situation. That's just how I feel as far as, the Chiefs hiring Eric Bieniemy. Of course, I'm backing it now and hoping that I'm completely wrong. I'm hoping that the Chiefs do go back to the 2018, 2019 offense and Eric Bieniemy can really come in and make change. I think there are some good situations with Eric Bieniemy coming in, and we're going to transition to the Chiefs' other hire, the wide receiver coach, Chad O'Shea. I think Eric Bieniemy bringing Chad O'Shea with him was a big deal. And I think Eric Bieniemy having that, accountability skill set and being able to hold Rashee Rice accountable, being able to hold Xavier Worthy accountable, holding some of these younger guys that need it, I think that is key. I think that is key for building guys in the locker room. I think it's key for the growth of your guys that you've drafted, especially when Rashee Rice is going to be on a contract year after this coming up season, or you may even decide to re-sign him or whatnot. But so the Chiefs decide to bring in someone with O'Shea's experience. It's really what I just talked about as far as going out of your comfort zone and the Chiefs just working through the tree. Chad O'Shea is not related to the Andy Reid tree, at least at all. Yes, Chad O'Shea did start his tenure with the Chiefs back in like 2003, as some assistant lower level coach, nothing crazy, but he's been in the league for a long time. And so the idea that there's, you're bringing in a veteran coach who's got 30 plus years of experience, and you have a wide receiver room that hasn't developed, that is a big step for me. And that makes me excited about this wide receiver room. So O'Shea brings nearly 3 decades of coaching experience, including a decade with the New England Patriots. And so that's something that came out when the Chiefs made this hire. There was a couple clips that were circulating in Chiefs Twitter and things like that. And it was talking about there's 2 big names that were kind of like giving the respect to Chad O'Shea and the Chiefs hiring him. And it was Rob Gronkowski, which is a huge deal. And of course, Julian Edelman. So he was a wide receiver coach for the Patriots, and Julian Edelman had some nice things to say, but Gronk had something really good. And he said, this is a quote from Rob Gronkowski, "I'm pumped about it. Chad O'Shea, I wouldn't say responsible for Randy Moss and Wes Welker's career, but I would say he's responsible for Julian Edelman's career in the New England. That's for sure." And so that's huge. I mean, that is a big deal coming from obviously one of the best tight ends of all time. And Julian Edelman was a very good receiver. So having that experience come in and being able to coach Rashee Rice, being able to coach Xavier Worthy, maybe you bring back Tyquan Thornton or Hollywood Brown and having them under Chad O'Shea as well. It's really awesome that they decided to go this route. And here's the quote from Julian Edelman. He said he'd have an individual 30-play cut up in each corner, highlighted examples of their strengths and weaknesses. Fridays were dedicated to red zone, 2-minute drill, and situational football. So the idea that this guy is basically a football fanatic, football freak, and he's going to level up our wide receiver room, it really makes me excited. 1, for the wide receiver room, but 2, it makes me excited that the Chiefs may not have to go spend a whole lot of money on getting a free agent or using pick number 9 in the draft to get a wide receiver, because you have some talent in the room as far as Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. I mean, those are talented guys. The problem is that they just haven't lived up to the talent that you expect. And that's the issue as far as the reason that Chad O'Shea is a big deal. At least in my eyes, I think he's a big deal. And so what does this mean for Kansas City? It means that the Chiefs' decision to bring in someone with O'Shea's experience, film study on these different things, it's just going to unlock more potential, I think, for a room that is lacking. And so I think the idea of having experience again and somebody outside of the tree is just a big deal. And I think it went under the rug a little bit. I really do think you're going to see a lot of improvement from guys like Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy and some of those guys in that wide receiver room. I really do. So let's move on to, let's add in some just quick conversations. Interesting enough, there is some news out that the Chiefs have narrowed down the design of their planned $3 billion stadium in Kansas to 2 local architectural firms, Manica and Poplis. So very interesting, very interesting. That is something that I think it's cool. Both are local companies, and I think Populous is probably going to get it. I think they've done a lot of NFL stadiums. So just something, just to throw out there, something that maybe if you didn't see, but the Chiefs are getting pretty close to probably getting some renderings out, probably getting some design out, getting a final location. So that's what I'm really excited for, is where all this stuff is, because again, I'm a hometown guy here. Live 5 minutes away from where the stadium possibly is going to go. So I'm excited for the Chiefs to continue to release news on that. So, all right, let's move on to running back free agents. So I put together this list. I actually got it off of this is off of a website where it shows different free agents coming up and whatnot. And so I excuse me. I wanted to screenshot this list and kind of go over some names that the Chiefs possibly might bring in. I think there's a situation where the Chiefs end up getting some of these guys, but the issue is that it depends on kind of depends on the cap and whatnot. Of course, they can't project all of the future cap, what they're going to sign, their deals, things like that. But this website pretty much gives you a list of all of the free agents. And I kind of want to touch base on maybe the top free agents for the Chiefs to sign in at running back position. And if there even is a shot to get them, how much it's going to cost, kind of the whole spiel. So there's some big names on here, and there's a few that I'd like to touch on. So we'll run through. There's Austin Eckler, which is, he's an older veteran. You got Travis Etienne is definitely a possibility currently with the Jaguars. You got Javonte Williams, currently with the Dallas Cowboys, Rico Dow, who had a good year. Nick Chubb, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, J.K. Dobbins, a couple other names, Kenneth Gainwell, Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt is on this list, and the list kind of drops off after that. So the big names that I think are on my board, and I have a top three. Oh, Tyler Algier, I think is on this list too, but I think he's farther down. That's another one. So the top three that are on my list for the Chiefs to sign, and it's basically, I didn't go shoot for the stars and try to get the biggest free agent name or anything like that. That to me is just, I don't think is realistic. It's going to be, the Chiefs cap space is really tough. It would be great if they could figure it out, but I went as realistic as I think the Chiefs will go, just how the Chiefs have operated in the past, and making big splashes on free agents only comes every so often. So the three big names that I see is Javonte Williams, Kenneth Walker, and Tyler Algier. And so we'll start with Javonte Williams. I think Javonte Williams he's an older running back, but I think you could get him for a decent deal, probably get him for around $5 to $7 million. Sign him on a 1-year deal, and you're basically going to build your running back room by committee. Javonte Williams would be like your first, second down. You'd bring back Kareem Hunt. You'd use Brashard Smith, and you would just kind of circulate all three of those guys. And you're not really having like that bell cow traditional running back. You're pretty much going to use, you're really just using multiple running backs. But Javonte Williams had a really good season with the Dallas Cowboys this year. So I think he's definitely an option. He's, a proven guy to give you 1,000 yards when he's healthy. He does have some health issues, but he's really good in the pass protection, short receiving, screens, things like that coming out of the backfield. Definitely will help Mahomes in that way. And I think he runs similar to the scheme of Eric Bieniemy. So he fits the scheme. Again, he's a little bit older, doesn't necessarily fit the timeline. Chiefs are trying to get younger, but I think if he's there and a lot of these other prospects are gone, I don't think he's a bad option. So number 2 is Kenneth Walker. I don't think the Chiefs can actually make a play on this, especially with the Seahawks advancing to the Super Bowl. And I really think Kenneth Walker is going to command like $11 million a year. So you're going to look at having to spend, $33 to $44 million on a guy. And again, he's had a great season. Zach Charbonnet just tore his ACL and he's out. So he's probably out for the majority of next season for Seattle. So more likely than not, Kenneth Walker is going to re-sign with Seattle. Just makes too much sense. But before the injury, I think a lot of people were trying to link Kenneth Walker. But either way, I think it's a pipe dream as far as in my eyes. Kenneth Walker, I don't necessarily love the fit. I do have this gut feeling that his career might start to turn downward, not on anything other than it's just a gut feeling. So, but there's something just about it that it's not my number one. I definitely think he'd be an option, but again, this list was made before the news about Zach Charbonnet and things like that. So don't be surprised if Kenneth Walker ends up re-signing. If I had to swap somebody out with Kenneth Walker, I would probably go, maybe the Jerome Ford route or something of that nature. But Kenneth Walker would have been a great signing for the Chiefs. But this last one is probably my most realistic, and I think is maybe the best move. And I think it's Tyler Algier. And the reason why is because I think it's cost effective, 3 down back, and you're getting a guy that's really young. I think he's only 25 or 26. So being 25 or 26, that fits the Chiefs timeline perfectly, where you get Tyler Algier. You could still bring back a Kareem Hunt. Maybe you don't have to go get somebody in the draft. And then you could still develop Brashard Smith as well as that third down, receiving back. And you don't necessarily have to put everything on Brashard Smith to be your receiving back, because again, Tyler Algier is a 3 down back who can catch out of the backfield, all these things. Yes, he's backing up Bijan Robinson, but again, he's backing up Bijan Robinson. So yes, there's not a lot of, you haven't seen a lot of film on him and things like that. And he only comes in on situational things, but the reality is that he's backing up one of the best running backs in the league, and he's really good. He's really good size. And I think he's just a very versatile running back that could help the Chiefs out, and he won't be expensive. You could probably get him for $4 million or less, I think. I think some of the websites are showing that he might be at $1 to $2 million. I think he probably gets a little bit more, but you could probably get him on a 3-year, $12 million deal, and the Chiefs would be very happy with that. So those are a couple of the free agent running backs I would push the Chiefs to try to get. Now, there is one that I think would be really cool, just one for the storyline, but two, I think he's a really great back, but he does everything that Brashard Smith would do. So you'd be kind of like just not moving on, but Brashard Smith will kind of get dumped down the depth chart, but it would be Rachaad White. He's a local kid, I think from either Raytown or somewhere there in Western Missouri. And I think he would be a really good fit just as a third down experienced guy, very good runner. He had a very good season when Bucky Irving was out this year. Had him on fantasy, so that's why I think, I paid attention to him a little bit. Very good runner, and I think he would fit. He's a zone runner, so I think he fits the scheme. And I think, I think you can get him for a good deal. And so those are kind of the running backs that I think the Chiefs should really try to get. I think that there's many different ways you can go. I just hope that you're not leaning, as a Chiefs organization, you're not leaning towards bringing back Isaiah Pacheco, that you're leaning towards bringing in Kareem Hunt, and those are your only two options that you end up choosing. To me, that is kind of a failure. I think the Chiefs really need to make a splash. That running back room was horrible, and I think everybody can agree. Isaiah Pacheco did not play well. Kareem Hunt was great, but he's getting older. And Brashard Smith is kind of just, you're not sure what you're going to get out of him. Another late round pick, another seventh rounder. You're not sure what you're going to get. So that is why I think, the Chiefs need to make a splash. And it could be a situation where they do go get Breece Hall. Breece Hall was, I would say Breece Hall was one of the guys that, the Chiefs tried to get in the offseason. They tried to get him in the offseason, and it just wasn't working out. I don't know. What is that, a line on my thing? Either way, the Chiefs were trying to get, Breece Hall in the offseason. They wanted to trade him with the Jets, and the Jets wanted a third-round pick, and they wanted to get, but the Chiefs wanted to give up a fourth. So it's like one of those situations where you're kind of, you want to go get a big name like Breece Hall or something like that, but he's going to cost you like $12 million a year, $13 million a year. So you're spending a lot of your money, your free agency money on, a running back, but it might be worth it. Mahomes coming off an ACL tear, it might be worth going to get somebody that can come in and make a huge impact. So that's kind of what I'm thinking as far as the running back situation. Again, it's one of those situations where you're hoping the Chiefs decide to make a move, make a splash, but again, they very well might just stay put, and that would be very disappointing. It'd be a very disappointing situation, I think, as far as as far as upgrading the running back room. So let's move on. I asked this question earlier on my social medias, and I wanted to ask you guys here. What do you guys think about re-signing Jalen Watson? So if you're in here, let me know what you guys think. So Jalen Watson, late round pick for the Chiefs, had a really good 4 years. He, he's one of those draft picks that really gets Veach kind of put on a pedestal because they hit basically. They hit the pick on that. So you're kind of like interested in investing in this guy. You kind of want to invest in him, but at the same time, he might be very expensive. I think Spot Track gives him, a valuation of probably like $15 million a year. So you're looking at paying him 4 over 60, something like that, with a lot guaranteed. And the Chiefs organization, Brett Veach, and they just haven't paid DBs, receiver, or cornerbacks, safeties, at least since Brett Veach has been there. They don't really pay a lot of those guys. So it's one of those situations where you're not really sure what the Chiefs could do. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments, at me, tweet at me, whatever, at SITG show. Let me know. Do you think the Chiefs should re-sign Jalen Watson or should they let him walk? Should they let him go into free agency and test the market? Let me know. So let's move on to draft prospects. So as we know, the Chiefs are having the 9th pick in the draft. And so this is probably one of the first times and hopefully one of the last that the Chiefs have a pick of this magnitude. And again, it's first one since Mahomes, getting in the top 10, but you hope you're never here again. So you want to take advantage of the situation. You want to take advantage of having a top 10 pick. And so you can't miss. I've said this continuously, on this show and on other shows. You cannot miss this pick. This guy has to be a guy that's going to be on your team for the next 7 to 10 years. You're hoping this guy signs a second contract. You get him the first 5 years of his career. You sign him to a contract extension between year 4 and 5, and then you've got him for another 4 years after that. So you're hoping you're getting a 9-year career out of this guy. You need him. You need one of those cornerstone pieces. So, for instance, like Patrick Mahomes is a cornerstone piece. You'd look at Josh Simmons, left tackle, as a cornerstone piece. Those are guys that aren't going to go anywhere. Those are guys that you want on your team 10 years plus. And it's because of positional value. Josh Simmons is going to be, if he comes out and plays really great in 2026, he's going to be one of the top paid left tackles when it's time to pay him. If he continues to prove himself, now he still has if he has injuries and he's injury prone and, or he has situations that come up and make him miss games and it's repeated, that's different. But you're looking at Josh Simmons as a cornerstone piece for your team. So this pick has to be a cornerstone piece for your team. So, excuse me. So let's read some of these top 15 prospects. I cut out Fernando Mendoza because obviously the Chiefs aren't even in the market for a quarterback. So let's look and see kind of who we think the Chiefs should take. And I have a list here that I think are pretty realistic. So the number 2 prospect, Alvaro Reese, he's going to be gone pretty fast. He'll probably be one of the top 3 picks, if not the second pick off the board. I just think that's a lot of mock drafts have him that way. And he's one of the best linebacker, edge rushers, athletes in the draft coming out of Ohio State. So he's not in contention. And I'll mark off a couple other guys. Any of the tackles, like the tackle out of Miami, the tackle out of Utah, the Chiefs probably are not going to make a high-level pick that, especially if they fell to them at 9. But the Chiefs are probably not making that pick just because they've invested so much in the offensive line already. I think I heard on 96.5 that they are one of the top teams. They've spent the most money on offensive line I think literally like between starters, backups, all of it, they have invested the most money in the offensive line, which is not a good thing because a lot of people think the Chiefs need to upgrade the offensive line still. And so that's kind of an issue on its own. But either way, so take the offensive line out, take Arvell Reese out because I think he'll be gone. So you're kind of left with a handful of guys that probably realistically makes sense for the Chiefs, at least in my opinion. So here are my top three, and I think there's a couple others. But my top three that I think will be there, again, the Chiefs are picking at 9, so you got to think some of these guys will be off the board. My number one I want is Ruben Bain. I just don't think he's going to make it. I think Ruben Bain is that game wrecker, the guy that you want to have on your team for 10 years. I just don't think he's going to make it to pick 9. So my list is basing that I think these are the guys that will make it to pick 9. So my first, if the Chiefs got to get, if it fell to him and the Chiefs are picking and I wanted to pick, this is who I would take that I think could realistically be there at pick 9. It's David Bailey. So David Bailey, the edge out of Texas Tech, he doesn't turn 21 until September of this coming up NFL season. So he's like a year younger almost. And he kind of reminds me like an NBA prospect where a lot of NFL prospects you're drafting on the talent now. And it's not common for teams to draft high picks on potential. Like the Chiefs trading up to get Mahomes, that 100% is they weren't drafting him for what he was that day. They knew that they saw the potential he had, so they moved up top 10 to pick Mahomes. When a lot of other people weren't even going to take Mahomes in the top 10 or didn't see the value that he had. So David Bailey reminds me a little bit of that situation. I think if this class was more edge rushers and there was more, just more defensive line going in the top or even quarterbacks, I think David Bailey would easily fall down to the Chiefs. I do think that there's a possibility that some of these teams, ahead of the Chiefs need edge. They need defense. You're seeing that defense is very important. Look at the Patriots defense. Look at the Seattle Seahawks defense. Look at the Houston Texans defense. Like a lot of playoff teams had very good defenses, and I think you're going to see a trend where investing in your defense is going to be kind of the new trend. So you're looking at David Bailey. Again, we understand that the Chiefs need to address the edge rush. You get David Bailey in there next to Chris Jones, next to George Karlaftis. You have a real conversation about having a really solid defensive line. And then you mixed in, Ashton Gelati. You're hoping Omar Norman Lott comes back off of his injury. And you have a solid 5. You only have to make a few additions in the free agency or maybe later in the draft. And you have a solid 5. That's a solid defensive line that Spags can work with. And I think if you can get David Bailey, I think it's a steal. I've made a bunch of posts about this next one, and I've gone against it early. I was kind of like early, like no, when the Chiefs, and the hype's still there about the Chiefs possibly getting this guy, but I was very against it. Now, the more that I think about it, especially if the Chiefs don't make a splash in running back free agency, I think Jeremiah Love is going to end up falling to the Chiefs. And part of my reasoning is because, one, he is a good talent and the Chiefs do need running back. But 2, I think there is, going back to my point about teams transitioning and upgrading defenses and the league kind of transitioning to better defenses, things of that nature, I think you're going to see a lot of defensive players go in the first 10. So you're going to see Caleb Downs. You're going to see Ruben Bain. You're going to see David Bailey. You might see Keldrick Folk out of Auburn, even though they have only ranked 12. A lot of these defensive guys might go early. You might see Peter Woods, go to a team that needs a D tackle. So that's the reason why I think the Chiefs might end up taking Jeremiah Love. They maybe go wide receiver here as well if they feel like wide receiver is more important. But I think running back is just as important. So if you don't go make a splash in free agency, and of course free agency is first, then the draft after, so you know what you're trying to fill the holes. So if you can't go get a Breece Hall, you can't go get Kenneth Walker, and you miss, now you know what you're shooting for in the draft. And it very well could be a Jeremiah Love. It makes sense to put weapons around Mahomes, especially coming off an ACL, LCL injury. So I don't hate the idea of it. It's just not what I would do because running backs' lives only are about 3 to 5 years. I was saying I felt bad for Pacheco in year 2 because he was a 7th round pick and you knew the Chiefs were going to move off him. That was before injury, before anything. My take was that I felt bad for the guy because you knew the Chiefs were going to be done with him. So, yes, if Jeremiah Love becomes Bijan Robinson, of course, you're going to have a guy for 8 years. So it's a hit or miss kind of situation. And of course, all draft picks are. So I don't want to necessarily just box him in as he has to be this superstar or nothing. But that's why it's important because you can't miss at pick 9. The Chiefs, you're what you believe as Patrick Mahomes leading your team, you're not going to be here. You're hoping you're not here ever again, but you're not going to be here for a long time at pick 9. So the idea is to hit on it now and get a superstar in here that you can have on your team for a long time. So Jeremiah Love could be that guy, could fill that role again if they don't address something in free agency. And my third pick that I think realistically will be there is Peter Woods, the D tackle there from Clemson. I think he will fall, and I think he is a realistic option, especially if the D ends are gone, Reuben Bain, David Bailey, Keldrick Falk. If those 3 guys are gone and the Chiefs still feel like they want to address the defensive line, Chris Jones is getting older and you want to replenish, Peter Woods, Omar Lott going into the future as your future D tackles, I could see it. I could see it just because it's a safe pick. You're getting a solid guy again that you're going to have on the team for at least 5 years, if not 8 to 9 years. So he's not anything special or crazy. I'm not saying he can't be. Haven't watched like a ton of film on him or anything. I just like that he's one of the best T tackles, and he's going to fall right around that, I think, pick 7 to pick 12 range. I would be surprised if he goes farther than that. And again, I think just because the league is switching to defense. But overall, I mean, if the Chiefs can get one of those 3 guys, I think I would be happy. Between David Bailey, Jeremiah Love, and Peter Woods, I don't think I would hate it, and I think I would be pretty excited. I think the Chiefs would, if they made one of those moves and they made that pick to get one of those 3 guys, I think it's a really good opportunity for the Chiefs to move forward. Now, a couple other guys on this list that intrigue me. Now, I don't, maybe they'd be my pick 4 and pick 5. I've seen a lot of stuff about Caleb Downs. No way. I'm not taking a safety in the top 10. We've seen what Veach can do in the draft late. We just talked about Jalen Watson recently. We've seen the different players he's brought in: Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Jamari Connor, Brian Cook, all of these different DBs, Jaden Hicks, all of these different guys. So I don't see a situation where the Chiefs go Caleb Downs. I think a lot of people like Caleb Downs, and he looks really good. But that position to me is not a high-valued top 10 position. So scratch Caleb Downs off the board. Again, Reuben Bain is somebody I really want. Take off the offensive tackles. I just don't think that's a situation. So now let's look at wide receivers. So there are a few wide receivers that will probably be available. You're looking at Jordan Tyson, you're looking at Carnell Tate, and you're looking at Malik Lemon or Mikhail Lemon. Sorry. So you're looking at the guy from USC, you're looking at the guy from Arizona State, and then you're looking at the guy from Ohio State. So do I hate the idea of taking a wide receiver at pick 9? I don't. Those would probably be my next 3. If I was making a list of 6, I would go David Bailey, Jeremiah Love, Peter Woods, and then I would go wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. So I don't hate the idea of them taking wide receiver just because the situation that they're in, which is Rashee Rice, questionable with some off-the-field issues that we still haven't really heard or got updates on. But also you have a contract extension with him. Xavier Worthy, who hasn't played great, but you still see potential, and you've got him for a few more years. And then pretty much after that, that's like the wide receiver room. You've got a bunch of just guys in there. And so you have to bring guys in. You got to get weapons. So if none of the defensive guys are there and, maybe Jeremiah Love isn't there, I don't hate one of the wide receivers, especially if you can get the guy from, Ohio State, Carnell Tate, and somehow he turns out to be the next JSN. the next Garrett Wilson, the next big guy from Ohio State. That would be awesome. Or, getting the guy from USC, Lemon. Again, any of these guys that can beat man and are projected to be really high-profile wide receivers, I don't hate the idea at all. I really don't. So I think if you can get a wide receiver in one of these other positions that you really wanted are gone, you take it. You take it and you hope that he turns out to be a top 10 wide receiver talent, because one, you need it. And two, again, it's just one of those situations where you can't miss. And that's why I think a lot of teams take offensive tackle, defensive line, because you get time to develop as an offensive tackle. You get time to develop as a defensive edge or defensive line. But when it comes to receiver, it comes to skill position, running back, whatever it is, man, you got to hit and you got to be good now. You don't have a lot of time to develop. I mean, you see what the hate Xavier Worthy's getting, and he's going to go into year 3. And if he doesn't improve, you're really thinking, do you move on from Xavier Worthy? So I think there's situations that either way, the Chiefs are going to probably be in a good position at pick 9. I think there are some scenarios where if maybe the first 9 guys that the Chiefs wanted are gone on their board, that they trade back a few picks, maybe like pick 15 or something. I could definitely see it. The Chiefs only have 6 picks in the draft, so getting a guy, that maybe you still value around pick 15 to 20, maybe like a Kenyon Sitg out of Oregon to replace Travis Kelce or something like that. I wouldn't hate it. And plus you're getting maybe an additional pick when you trade back. So you would go from 6 to 7 picks or something like that. I could see something like that. I wouldn't see a situation where the Chiefs would trade up. That would be tough. I think that's a tough situation where they trade up, just because, again, you've only got 6 picks and then you'd be giving up future assets probably. Yes, if you trade Trent McDuffie and you get some assets, but again, I think you're trading Trent McDuffie to try to get more, rookies, cheap contracts, that nature. So it'd be really hard for me to say that the Chiefs should, end up trading up to go get Reuben Bain or go get, David Bailey or whoever they want, just because, yes, those guys are important, but you shouldn't give up multiple first and future assets to make it happen. So that's kind of my spiel on the draft prospects. So let's dive back into the Super Bowl. It's kind of a crazy outcome where you had a Jared Stidham Broncos team scare the Patriots. You got a quarterback who threw 86 passing yards, going to be playing for the Super Bowl on one side, and Drake May, who played a crazy snow game. And then we got a lights out game. Excuse me. We got a lights out game with, Seattle, and how they played was awesome against the Rams. So I think that's, I think it was a great championship weekend. Again, the snow globe game was kind of boring, and, it made me really miss the Chiefs as far as just being in the playoffs. It made me miss Patrick Mahomes out there doing his thing, watching that Broncos Patriots game. But the Seattle and Rams game was awesome. It was really fun to watch. Seattle looks great. I think I tweeted out that they look like the most complete team I've seen in a while, just on all-in special teams, offense, defense. I think if Sam Darnold can continue just to be that game manager guy, again, throwing for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, like if he can just be that game manager, I think that they should win the Super Bowl with ease. My official prediction, I'm going to say that the Seattle Seahawks end up beating New England Patriots. I'm going to call it 31-21. I think that the line right now is set like 4.5, which if you kind of do the betting odds math, if Seattle was at home, you get 3 points because it's at a neutral site. So really they're saying that excuse me, that Seattle should beat New England by a touchdown, which that seems like a big deal, a 7.5 point favorite basically. So I think a lot of people are betting that Seattle's going to win, and rightfully so. They look very good, and they just look complete. So that's kind of who I pick. Is I'm going to pick the Seattle Seahawks to win the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold, what a crazy story, and I'm excited to watch. We've got a week off of football. The Pro Bowl's this weekend, but does anybody really watch that? But we'll see. They've changed it to flag football, so I might tune in. But either way, another Tuesday edition of Skin in the Game. Appreciate everyone for stopping in. Don't forget to follow us on all social media below. YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, SITG Show. We are going to continue to go every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. So appreciate you guys stopping in. Don't be afraid to leave a comment. Let me know. Hit me up on any social medias. If you got a topic that you want to hear or talk about, let me know. Let's do it. So we'll catch you guys next Tuesday. Peace.